But also, too, about Tony talking about her skin complexion, about being too dark and stuff.
Or being too light. I mean, I won't even go there. If it wasn't for this show, people still, what are you? And that's like your life and your mix. And
channel. I am your host, Queen. Mixed Vixen is a community where Black women, femmes, and folks impacted by misogynoir are the standard and not the exception. And I do this work through my magazine, podcast, workshops, and now on the tube. So what I do here is reshare Mixed Vixen articles and podcast episodes and make it in video format so that, more people can get into our shit. And today we are doing an article. We are visiting a piece from a series that I wrote earlier this year. It is a colorism series. That's right. This video will be about colorism. Because it's real. If you don't think colorism is real, then you should just stop playing this video. I don't want you here. I'm going to be for real. I don't. With this series, I wrote 3 pieces. I wanted to have a very nuanced conversation about colorism because a lot of times they fall a little flat and they just don't be doing it for me a lot of it. If you would like to read all 3 pieces, I have the links to them down below. The first article of the colorism series is titled "Why I Stopped Talking to Light-Skinned People About Colorism." I started there. So let's get into it. Colorism isn't a topic that I shy away from. It's been pretty easy for me to identify, uncover, and dismantle when it appears anywhere around me. I'm grateful that my childhood was never engulfed in it, which has contributed to the confidence I have when I reject harmful systems that is colorism in Black spaces. My immediate family is many shades of Blackness, and it wasn't something we were taught to weaponize against each other. Hierarchies of value, treatment, or lovability weren't given to my siblings and me based on our shade. It wasn't until puberty and when my desirability became a thing for me that I was introduced to it. And that's when I began to see the harm Black people were inflicting intracommunally by upholding colorism. I began to be more vocal about that harm when I was a teenager and haven't really stopped. The topic of colorism, I thought then, wasn't a harmful thing to bring awareness to, especially since dismantling it could only improve things within communities I interacted with. It has mostly been safe and hasn't felt like any heavy lifting was necessary for these conversations. Yet, throughout the years, I have noticed that the only time colorism conversations have become unwarranted labor for me is when it was with a light-skinned person. Many times I have been hurt, appalled, and disgusted by my light-skinned friends and not friends when chatting about colorism. It has caused me so much trauma and harm that I just had to stop having them. I couldn't believe it. People who had so much sense, knowledge, and depth when we talked about all the other oppressive systems are somehow indignant about colorism. For my mental health, self-love, and need to conserve my energy, I stopped having conversations with light-skinned folks about colorism because simply your girl is tired. The path that leads to no longer discussing colorism to light-skinned folks has been many years coming. But let's first do some context housekeeping so you, the viewer, and I are on the same page of what colorism is and who exactly I am talking to in this piece, and all the ways in which people have got me fucked up throughout the years. Author and activist Alice Walker, who is most credited for defining the term colorism, defines it as prejudicial or preferential treatment of same-race people based solely on their color. In an essay that appeared in her 1993 book, In Search of Our Mother's Gardens. The term has come a long way since then and is now included in Webster's dictionary, defined as prejudice or discrimination, especially within a racial or ethnic group, favoring people with lighter skin over those with darker skin. Alice Walker definitions does the job, but some folks only believe that things are real when a white institution says it, so that's why I put in the Webster dictionary meeting. All right, back to that today. One of my ongoing issues with discussing colorism with a light-skinned person is their lack of understanding of anti-blackness, privilege, and power structures, and the way these ideas must exist to result in actual oppression of a person. Simply put, not all pain is oppression. And we all have to be real with ourselves about that. There's always a very weird need for light-skinned Black people to insert their own hurtful experiences as Black people and name that reverse colorism. It's very empty and a basic understanding of what the actual conversation of colorism is about. Somehow it's lost that colorism is something very independent of their trauma due to anti-Blackness. Anti-Blackness is a very specific kind of racism against Black people. So many of us understand that Blackness is one of the most feared and hated constructs created in white supremacy. Yet it's somehow forgotten that Black people can also be perpetuators of oppression. In particular, having internalized anti-Black ideas that will allow us to consciously and subconsciously treat each other badly. It has been throughout these many hurtful conversations about colorism that I have had with other Black people who are light-skinned that it's made clear there isn't a basic understanding that colorism lives abundantly in anti-Blackness. In particular, having internalized anti-Black ideas that allow us to consciously and subconsciously treat each other badly. It has been through these many hurtful conversations about colorism that I have had with other Black people who are light-skinned that it is made clear there isn't a basic understanding that colorism lives abundantly in anti-Blackness, and that they too can be guilty of maintaining this hurtful system whether they have chosen to or not. With such a huge piece missing, how will they ever understand colorism? Colorism allows preferential treatment of lighter-skinned people, and if you are light-skinned, you benefit from it whether you consciously participate in it or not. According to dictionary.com, privilege is the unearned and mostly unacknowledged societal advantage that a restricted group of people has over another group or person. Privilege is usually skipped over when addressing colorism's impact on communities. Light-skinned Black people need to understand that addressing colorism isn't a conversation about whether you are Black or not. It's a discussion about society believing you are the preferred Black person and the benefits you receive from simply being the preference.
There's this picture of a couple of rappers. It was like Jay-Z, Diddy, Swiss Beats, somebody else at a table, and they were like talking about like what excellence looks like, and all of their women. You had Beyonce, Alicia Keys, Cassie, all very light skinned. So clearly there's an association with like being high class and looking a certain way. And I know for me, like I was always very urged to like this idea of like a messy bun, like throwing your hair in a messy bun. And I used to have hair like more than this. So like putting my hair in a messy bun and putting on sweats and going outside, I couldn't do that, because if I do that as a darker skinned woman with my hair nappy and like, then somebody might think I was homeless, or somebody would think like, oh, that she didn't shower today or whatever. The lighter you are and the more polished you look is definitely associated with more money.
Best friends are much lighter than me, right? So I have been standing next to my friends and people have literally not said hello to me because they are not seeing me. People literally ignore dark-skinned women, particularly fat dark-skinned women, particularly fat dark-skinned women that don't have no hair. Me, you know what I'm saying? Like
the power structure colorism gives the preferred black person, and in this case of colorism, lighter skinned people have the power and authority to continue this system or stop it. I'm going to say that again. The power structure colorism gives the preferred black person, and in this case, colorism, lighter skinned people have the power to continue this system or stop it. Time and time again, the choice is to not stop it. And this is where my indifference is birthed. Usually when I'm engaging in colorism discussions with a light-skinned black person, they bring up being bullied by dark-skinned folks as kids, make an argument for reverse colorism, think colorism is all about invalidating their black experience, or say the conversation is divisive and we should focus on more important things.
It's not my fault if you're just crazy. I really feel like it's less craziness and more emotional outbursts, and y'all have a hard time controlling yourselves. Just pretend that you're ladylike. Can you even pretend to be a woman with some class? Because the men who are reading these comments, they're disgusted by how you women are acting. Like, it's embarrassing. And these are actual full black men that are saying this to me. So if it matters to you, whether it's a full black person, a half black person, a light-skinned black person, I'm just clarifying, full black males who themselves carry themselves in a very professional, classy manner are reading your comments, and they're disgusted by how you women are presenting black women. You're representing black women, right? Because you're telling me I'm not black enough to be having any commentary on black lives. So if that's really true, and you are truly a black woman that's representing blackness, look at how you're representing yourself. It looks ridiculous. Please stop. I know y'all not gonna listen. Just hearing me say this is already like triggering so many people. They already in the comments, what? I know. But I'm so used to this. I dealt with this my entire teenage years in school because I grew up in the hood. Just like this used to come at me and my sister constantly, angry, and we weren't even doing anything to them. I'm minding my business. I'm walking through the halls. I don't even know you, but you want to fight me. Why? Because you don't like your reflection when you look in the mirror? That's pathetic. You have a problem with your looks, nobody else. Everybody else is looking on the outside going, this girl looks cute. Why is she so angry at this chick? Like, what's wrong with her? Y'all got big butts, nice hips, pretty hair. There's nothing wrong with you, but you're so jealous of girls like me that you think are just easily getting attention from men. You don't know what to do with yourself, and so you just internalize that as, I must not be pretty enough. My skin tone must be too dark. Get the f*** out of here. You're feeding into your own psychosis. Relax. Anyway, I'm sorry. I shouldn't do that. Because this triggers a lot of girls too. They get really upset when they see me like messing with my hair because it's growing out of my scalp. I don't know what it is, you guys. It doesn't matter what I do. I could be sitting here like this. They still want to talk shit. Like there's nothing I can do. You know what I'm saying? So I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to offend you by doing this to my hair.
All of these responses reap of them being an oppressor, their privilege being tugged at, and shows a huge lack of understanding of their privilege to begin with. It tells me that they are comfortable with the power structure colorism affords them, and they have no interest in changing any of this shit. To keep it a buck, light-skinned black people are the sole beneficiary of colorism. They are the only winners in this dynamic, and until they can finally be honest about that, dark-skinned people will be wasting your time. In the past, it was some of these moments where I'd usually ask a light-skinned black person, please, tell me how dark-skinned people benefit from colorism. when they are not the people who receive preferential treatment? I've yet to get a substantial answer to that question. Just silence, stutters, or rage. Very rarely an acknowledgement of their privilege takes place. So I'm left sitting there empty after explaining my oppression to an individual who has already decided the system works perfectly fine the way it is. Why would I continue this cycle of heartbreak from Black people I'm supposed to be in community with? That lack of awareness also leads to the failure of that bullying argument as well. What's actually taking place is most dark-skinned children have figured out the privilege light-skinned people have before other light-skinned children have. And they're reacting to that. That is a painful experience for light-skinned Black people. But that is not oppression or reverse colorism. I vaguely remember some years back hearing a light-skinned person equate being teased and called ice cream as another dark-skinned woman in the conversation expressed she was called a burnt skillet as a child. A skillet. I don't know what parallel universe she thought she was on, but she really believed the same harm was happening in the stories they shared. Those stories aren't even close to the same thing because of power structures. And let's be serious, being called ice cream, something most people enjoy, if you're not lactose intolerant. And attached to happiness isn't harmful. Yet somehow the light-skinned woman thought it was. It is through interactions like this that I've learned that it's commonplace to be completely ignorant to your privilege as a light-skinned person and fully aware of your oppression as a Black person simultaneously. This is the experience I think light-skinned folks have. Very aware of your oppression as a Black person, but completely unaware of your privilege. Both things can be true, and they usually are. To go further, what is actually experienced when being bullied due to your lighter hue is retaliation due to the privilege. That is not oppression. Oppressed people don't get breaks. It is a continuous cycle, and having just a few moments of discomfort due to your shade is a privilege dark-skinned folks do not have. We don't have that. Where is it? Where is that?
I love my people. I love all the shades. God made me this way, so I have to be happy with who I am. And it's a journey, and I embrace my brown-skinned sisters. I love them, and I hope that they embrace me. And I want my brown-skinned sisters to stop looking at the light-skinned sisters and she thinks she cute. No, she doesn't. I heard that with my girlfriend. She thinks she cute because she swung her hair. It was in her face. Or the way she walks, she doesn't think she's cute. She's confident. But I bet you that same sister's at home crying on the floor because we got the same issues.
So, similar to how Black people being continuously reminded of their Blackness, even when they don't want to think about race, we have to. We're always forced to think about race. This same occurrence extends to being a dark-skinned person. I'm always thinking about my color. I have to. I'm always thinking about how people treat me and things like that in relation to the brownness, the darkness of my skin. Similar to how we all aren't afforded days off from anti-Blackness, dark-skinned people, we don't get no days off or refuge from colorism. The situation in the story that I told, those situations are never equivalent because of the way power structures are set up. One person has privilege in the space, the light-skinned person, and the other doesn't, the dark-skinned person. So much nuance is lost when I've had these conversations in the past because of the insufferable need to be seen as a victim of something. Also, another thing that's important to understand, I know I'm talking about Black people here, but colorism happens globally because maintaining anti-Blackness has its benefits. Also, anti-Blackness happens in spaces where there is no Black people. That is also true too. Probably another essay at some point. But let me get back into colorism.
This isn't even a phenomenon only seen in the Black community. Communities such as the Asian, South Asian, and Latinx communities experience the same thing. Colorism in these communities take many different forms. Whether it's a Chinese laundry commercial featuring a dark man going into a washing machine to become a lighter, more Chinese person, or Filipino people being told they're at the bottom of the Asian totem pole because they're dark. In Bollywood, there's been an outcry in recent years because Bollywood movies use too small of a range of skin tones to represent the entire Indian population. As a result, some people have started counter movements to counter this harmful propaganda, such as Nandita Das and her My Dark is Beautiful campaign. Latinx stars such as Mara La Negra received significant backlash over trying to break the mold of what mainstream Latinx stars look like, including hyper-scrutinization over her hair and skin, being accused of blackface, and not even being considered Latina. So because this is something that affects so many people, you would think it's something that more people spoke up about. And yes, there's been an increased interest in the whole colorism thing. However, the reason it's not as loud as it could be is because people think it's natural. They've never been exposed to anything different. It's what they grew up on. And even if you did grow up in a household like I did, where you were taught that your black was beautiful, or that your brown was beautiful, and that your dark skin was great, and your hair is also great, once you walk out that door, you will feel all of the effects of colorism.
It is important to understand that the basis in colorism being a byproduct of white supremacy and anti-blackness, it's not simply a result of enslavement because it exists worldwide. The chattel slavery did not happen worldwide, but colorism sure does exist worldwide. All of the false Willie Lynch ideas as the birth of colorism and that it's created to keep us separated is bull. Light-skinned people have used colorism and anti-blackness as a means for survival, and they don't want to let that go. This is one of the biggest ways light-skinned people have played all up in my face. Watching their scramble to hold on to this ounce of power really makes me sick to my stomach. And I refuse to look at it anymore. I just can't. Conflating colorism with racism is where y'all really feel me the most. That's usually where the colorism is defined. Colorism. Oh, colorism. No, they want to separate us. They want to keep us apart. It's the man. He's doing the work of the man. Racism is not colorism, but they are definitely cousins of the same family. They both use the basis of anti-blackness to prop themselves up firmly. How many times have you been told black oppression isn't real by non-black people, and it filled you with rage? That rage has been my experience 90% of the time when talking to light-skinned people with whom I share community with. I have personally experienced people thinking that I'm too harsh. It's always assumed my thoughts are laced with a bad attitude because a dark-skinned black person is attached to it. My emotions and actions are always interpreted as anger. My directness always perceived as dismissiveness. And my pain is not real because I'm dark-skinned and I'm strong. I have literally been in rooms with other light-skinned people, other light-skinned black people, doing the same work, saying the same things. But they're somehow passionate, direct, and can be trusted when we have literally said the same thing. This has been done to me many times by other black people, yet colorism isn't real. Colorism is only divisive to people who don't want to give up their power in the system that actually oppresses people in your community. Light-skinned people need to be honest about not wanting to give up the power their privilege provides them. Admit that being the preference is the center of your identity. One day I decided to preserve my personal peace, and this led to the decision to divest from speaking to light-skinned people about my oppression as a dark-skinned person. I know for sure it's the result of 30 plus years of gaslighting, oppression, and abuse that I realized many Black people, in this case, light-skinned Black people, just care about their individual salvation and don't actually care about the freedoms of all iterations of Blackness and its people. The main reason light-skinned people don't care to understand colorism is, why question a system you reap all the benefits from? So, do I live my life continuing to be disappointed by people I'm in community with? Or do I make the decision to let some of y'all go? At this moment, I have to let y'all go. That concludes my first piece of the series on colorism that is available on MsVixenMag.com if you want to read the other pieces. Like I said earlier, thank you if you made it to the end of the video. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the description box. And if you're shady, I'm just going to delete that shit because I don't have time. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you next time. Stay fly.